What's up, everyone? You've already seen a little bit with the James Rachel's reading and then the John Stuart Mill on Liberty reading that one of the things that can make this class hard, maybe even harder than you would have expected, because you think, oh, ethics, just talk about ethical issues, is the readings. The readings can be really, really difficult. And I want to talk to you a little bit about like why even have really difficult readings in the first place. It'd be pretty easy for me to not give you any of these readings by John Stuart Mill or Kant. I could give you just readings by people who explain these readings or just do videos explaining the readings. The reason that we read these difficult readings is that in addition to learning how to do ethics, learning the principles that can help us think about ethical issues, I think it's important for you all to learn other skills too. And so some of the skills you're working on in this course, right, when you're doing your case studies, you're learning how to put together an argument. But another really important skill that translates into other classes is the ability to just really work through difficult text and try to figure out what's going on with it. So today I'm going to do that again, working through this reading. We're going to work on this reading for 2 weeks. But normally in the other times, like with Mill and Rachel's, I sort of just gave you a tour, but I didn't really necessarily answer a lot of questions. Today I'm going to help a little more just because this is so hard. So I'm going to help with a couple of phrases, words that I think can be really confusing here. All right, so let's take a look through this. So first of all, these underlines that you see here, some of these bold statements, these are things I've added. So what I did is I went into an online version of Kant's Groundwork for Metaphysics and Morals. I copied and pasted it, and then I added some things to sort of help you think about these from section to section. Okay, so let's sort of do what we did with Rachel's, and again with Mill, we'll do a little tour first, okay? So I know I've got some different sections here. I know the first thing that I'm going to try to understand is what is meant by this first proposition of morality. So I'm cued in to like, this is the thing I'm supposed to take away from that. So then the next section is acting from duty is contrasted with acting from an ulterior motive, but without an accompanying inclination. So that's confusing, but our goal is going to be to understand what that means. Right? Acting from duty, so now we already know there's this key term, from duty, is contrasted with acting from an accompanying inclination. So now my goal is to understand that. Then we've got a little section here, the contrast is further developed. So this is helpful because this shows us that all that's going to happen in this section is that we're going to better explain the section before it, right? Maybe with some examples and things like that. So I know if I don't quite understand the previous section, this will actually help me understand it. All right, so all of that was the first proposition of morality. In fact, probably what I should have done is sort of make this bigger. So this is like, the big subtitle, and then these are smaller subtitles within it, okay? So then we get down here, we have the second proposition of morality. So now I know that when I'm reading, I know, okay, that was one claim, and now I'm on to a second major claim. Note here, we've got some numbers. So here's going to be drawn out examples that Kant's going to use, right? So we're going to want to focus on those. We've got 4 examples that he uses. And then he's going to go back through those examples, not with a number here, but you see it says fourthly, thirdly, secondly, and actually what he's doing here is he's going through the same examples but using a different formulation of the thing that he did earlier. So that gives us a little tour. So now let's try to, see what we can figure out here with some of these key things. Sorry to make you dizzy with the scrolling. All right, so let's go up to the top. We got the first proposition of morality, and what I've underlined is we have then to develop the notion of a will, which deserves to be highly esteemed for itself and is good without a view to anything further. a notion which exists already in the sound natural understanding, requiring rather to be cleared up than to be taught, and which, in estimating the value of our actions, always takes the first place and constitutes the condition of all the rest. Holy moly. All he's saying there is that you want to understand this notion of a will that's valuable for its own sake. Okay? Esteemed for itself. And he says, we already have kind of an understanding of this in our minds. We just sort of need to clear it up. So we got to talk a little bit about what we mean by will. So a will, all he means about the word will here is a desire, but more than desire, because I might desire to go to the moon, right? But it's sort of like desire put into action, right? Where so you're willing something into being is, all right, you're putting your energy and your desire into making it happen. So if you will something, there's lots of things that we could, or ways that we could will that are bad, right? Like, so if I will the burning down of your house, right, that's clearly bad. So he's trying to develop this idea of a will which is always admirable. So think about this phrase here, a will which deserves to be highly esteemed for itself and is good without a view to anything further. So think of it this way. If I will being nice to you, but the reason I will being nice to you is so that you'll lend me your car, that willing isn't about the willing itself. It's got to do with the view to something further, right? So my will is really to get you to loan me the car. My willing of being nice to you is just a means to something further. So he's saying, no, I want to look at like a purely good will. And that's going to be the key phrase here. And all he's going to do here is try to show us what he thinks a good will is. That's it. Okay, that's the first proposition of morality we know is going to have something to do with this phrase, the good will. So now we need to talk about another word that's a little confusing, and it's the word duty, which I always feel like Family Guy when I say the word duty. But in order to do this, we'll take the notion of duty. So all he means by duty, and this is super important, is the idea of doing what's right. Okay? We're going to get later to how we figure out what's right. But the key thing here is that the goodwill is connected to doing what's right. But it's not the case that every time we do what's right, we're acting from a goodwill. So think about the example I just gave you. I'm only being nice to you so you'll loan me your car. Kant would say that's not really reflecting the goodwill, because I'm not being nice to you sort of for its own sake. I'm only trying to get something out of you. So being nice to you is a good thing, but so we might say it's the right thing to do, but Kant is going to be talking about doing the right thing for the right reasons. And that's the one thing that differentiates him from utilitarianism. For Kant, it's all about the reasons, not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Okay? So I'm just going to talk this week about the beginning of this reading, and then next week we'll talk a little bit about the rest of the reading. I omit here all actions which are already recognized as inconsistent with duty. So all that means is like a good will, doing the right thing for the right reasons, can't possibly be found if you didn't even do the right thing. Simple. Now these ones are harder. I also set aside those actions which conform to duty, so you did the right thing, but to which people have no direct inclination. You didn't want to do it, right? I don't really want to be nice to you, but we're impelled thereto by some other inclination. I don't want to be nice to you, but I do want you to loan me your car, so I do the right thing. I don't want to do it, but I did it to get something out of you. That's all we mean. Now, it doesn't have to be super mean and selfish, though. I could have done the right thing, um, maybe to help somebody else. But my action wasn't purely for the sake of wanting to do the right thing. Okay. But the example I'm using with the getting you to loan me the car is like the easiest one to think about. So then he says, it is much harder to make this distinction when the action accords with duty, you did the right thing, and the subject has besides a direct inclination to it. So this is the crazy one. Okay, this idea is that not only did you do the right thing, you felt like doing the right thing. So I'm nice to you. Why? Because it's sunny out. It's nice. It's warm for the first time in 3 months. So I'm in a good mood. I felt like being nice to you. So we might say like, well, what's wrong with that? And it's not that anything's wrong with that, but Kant is trying to figure out the difference between doing something that's right because you feel like it and doing the right thing because it's right. So let's look at this a little bit. He says it's always a matter of duty, the right thing to do, that a dealer should not overcharge an inexperienced purchaser. So you own a store, right? We're not going to rip people off. And but here we have his own advantage required it. Okay, so this is about this one. Conform to duty, no direct inclination, performed thereto because they were impelled by some other inclination. So why do I not rip you off? Because I want you to keep shopping there. So, right, it's just about my personal advantage. So he's going to say that's not what we're talking about here. Now he's going to get to the more complicated example. It's a duty to maintain one's life. But we all also naturally want to stay alive, usually. But on this account, let me skip here. Most people preserve their life as duty requires, but not because duty requires it. You don't try to stay alive because you know you have an obligation to stay alive. You stay alive because you want to be alive. But what if all of a sudden you don't want to live anymore? Only then, when you keep on living, we can see why that you're staying alive because you know it's the right thing to do, even if you no longer feel like it. So Kant has this a lot of people talk about this example of someone going to see somebody in a hospital because they feel like going versus they don't feel like going, but they go because it's the right thing to do. And a lot of times teachers teach this like the person who goes even though they don't feel like it is somehow morally better. That's not really Kant's point, but what Kant's doing is saying the person who goes even when they don't feel like it, that example just allows us to see the idea of doing what's right because it's right. And what we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks is just like why that's a big deal, right? Why do we have to do what's right? Because it's right. So I'm going to finish up the first proposition this week. Next week we'll deal with the second proposition and we'll look at examples. The basic idea in the first proposition is pretty simple. The goodwill, right, this valuable kind of wanting to do the right thing, what we talk about when we talk about doing the right thing for the right reasons, the first proposition of morality is going to be what we mean by doing the right thing for the right reasons is doing what's right because it's right. Simple. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about, in second proposition, why it can't be about consequences, like the utilitarians think. So we'll look forward to that, but mainly what I want you to also just do is practice doing what I'm doing here. Break it down, go paragraph by paragraph, take some notes, see if you can make sense of it for yourself, and see if you can sort of tell yourself the story of this reading in a 1 to 2 page summary. Again, not something you're turning in, but something that'll help you for your own benefit. All right. Hope that helps a little bit. Your flip grid this week is going to be about thinking through some of this reading. And then you've got a small homework assignment based on a movie. Look forward to it. Thanks, everyone.